yeah, no, but like the first one is Myrto, but you have to say that it's 1 minute to the event starts. Hi everyone, we have 1 minute and we'll start.
Good morning, everyone. We have 1 minute before we start the event. Could we please just get around and give attention? Hello? Hi. Okay, sweet.
I think probably we'll photograph a little bit better because
Good morning, distinguished audience and my speakers. We'll be starting our event now, Changing the Game for Climate. We're looking at female leaders in the nuclear space that are making change and bringing change as well as having those impactful initiatives. This panel will cover the stories of female leaders, discuss the crucial role each woman is playing in their field, as well as good and bad lessons learned from around the globe. From around the globe, and how to ensure equal opportunities of changing the world for all genders, and how this varies geographically between domains and level of seniority. And I'll introduce my panel speakers today. And with me, I have Raquel Heredia from Wien, Mexico. And then I have Myrto Tripathi as well from France. And I have Princess Mthombeni from South Africa. And last but not least, I have Paris from USA. Thank you. So today we're also celebrating Gender Day as well as Water Day. So that's why I have these distinguished women with me to tell us more about what are they doing in their fields. They're running global campaigns and in making sure that we bring awareness about nuclear and what's their role in terms of climate change and what they're driving around the globe. So I'll ask a question to them and so that they can tell us what is it that they involve in. Jesus Christ. Before I even ask questions, I would like to give a little bit of biography of them. And oh my gosh. Okay. We're going to start with Paris Ortiz. Paris Ortiz is a global director of Stand Up for Nuclear. And Paris oversees the organization's outreach and engagement efforts with 5 years of advocacy experience. She has spearheaded in-person demonstrations and social media campaigns around the world, growing up Stand Up for Nuclear from a single event to 73 events across 26 countries. Paris began her career at Environmental Progress, an environmental non-profit organization focused on protecting nuclear plants from premature closure. In 2 years, she went from being an executive assistant to a junior analyst, revising energy analysis reports, leading research groups, and organizing international conferences. During this time, she fell in love with nuclear energy and committed herself to advocating for clean energy. Wanting to concentrate on growing a grassroots movement for nuclear power, she left EP and transitioned into her role at Stand Up for Nuclear. And Paris continues to mobilize and assist allies around the world in building their network and developing their strategy. Her efforts have been covered in World Nuclear News, The Standard, National Geographic, and Reuters, and other major media outlets. And second, I'm going to introduce Princess Mthombeni and give you a brief of what she does. Princess Mthombeni is a multi-award-winning communication specialist and a lifelong nuclear technology advocate from South Africa. Her globally recognized work involves providing high-level strategic support to the governments in leading, executing, and ensuring the success of nuclear communication strategies. Prince's contribution to the nuclear industry includes founding Africa for Nuclear, which is a campaign that advocates for nuclear, that promotes nuclear energy as a key contributor to achieving Africa's agenda for sustainable development. And she has over 30 years experience in the nuclear industry. Prince has built an even more powerful reputation, which led to her becoming a thought leader in communicating nuclear science and in the African continent. Her incredible work has seen her being a speaker at numerous high-profile global events and has been featured in different news platforms, including the World Nuclear News, The Guardian, and the Africa Business. Additionally, Princess has previously served in the board of Women in Nuclear South Africa, as well as Africa Young Generation in Nuclear, where the main goal is to promote peaceful uses of nuclear science and technology for the benefit of humankind. And I'm going to present now Raquel. Raquel is from, as I mentioned, Mexico. Raquel Heredia is a professional with over 12 years experience in various fields. She has worked in energy and construction firms, development NGOs, and research institutions. Raquel has also undertaken entrepreneurial, consulting, and advocacy activities. Through these various roles, she has developed comprehensive skills in nuclear communications, project management, development, and leadership. Her advocacy work is focused on championing diversity and inclusion and nuclear science and technology as a crucial force for development. She's a sustainable development engineer by profession, focusing on nuclear energy, and holds a master's degree in arts and development studies from the UK, where she studied the socio-political impact of low-carbon energy transitions. Raquel is the founder and president of the Women in Nuclear Mexico and the regional representative for the Mexico in the North American Young Generation Network. A member of the board and communications advisor for WIN Global Young Generation, and an active member of the WIN Global Communications Committee. Additionally, she is the communications and promotionalist leader for the Nuclear for Climate COP27 delivery team. And my final speaker is Myrto Tripathi. Myrto Tripathi is an energy transition specialist and the role of nuclear energy in the fight against climate change. She is the founder president of the Voices of Nuclear and Replanet France, both environmental NGOs imparting scientific and technical education. The Voices of Nuclear that she created in 2018 has played a major role in changing French public opinion towards nuclear. In 2014, before joining COP21 negotiations, as director, she led negotiations for export of EPR nuclear reactor. She worked in the UN Global Compact in France for 4 years and participated in climate policy director for various COP initiatives concerning climate before optioning to join the civil society in 2018 for voluntary work. She holds an industrial engineering and a business management degree. Myrto teaches at Science Po and regularly intervenes via media and publications. She is the author of La Bataille pour le Climat, published by Renes in 2020. I hope I pronounced that right. Okay, those are our distinguished speakers, and now we're going to go into asking them questions so that we can learn more about their initiatives and learn more about what they do, how they're impacting the world, and changing the opinions and helping us make sure that we mitigate climate change. I hope you're okay. Our first introductory question to all of you, this is addressed to all of you. Our guests are leaders in advocacy and campaigning around the world. Could you tell us about the projects that you're leading that help drive the change for climate, and how did you actually get there? We can start with Tripathi.
Hi, thank you very much for this question. Well, I think it's actually rather easy to get people on board nuclear when they start knowing the stakes associated to it, how it impacts a lot of different areas. The challenge when you have volunteers is how to keep them on board and motivated all the time, while you essentially don't have much more to offer than the value and the quality of what they're doing. So you have to prepare and offer a large variety of projects that go from very content-driven, for example, what we do in France is that we propose and we challenge the vision of the energy mix of France and the European Union with modeling of the electric grid, some things very technical and content-driven. And on the other side, we have small teams running 10Ks or more. We advocate in the streets on the climate marches and stuff like that. So you have to have that wide array of things. You have to have visibility because people, of course, like to be associated with visibility because it means that their work is being, and their word is being carried over to the public sphere. So essentially, one strategy we have developed at the Voices is every year to keep a campaign theme and to choose based on one particular news or event an opinion piece we want to change, something we want to achieve. For example, 3 years ago, France closed down one of their major nuclear power plant. Our target was to change the narrative around that closure and to make sure that what remained in history, what came down in history, was that that closure was a political act against climate and not something that the industry had been forced to do because they had, wanted to expose the public to additional risk. So we made sure that message passed through. And every year we changed the topic. We had a major wins with the taxonomy. We spent a lot of time, and it crystallized earlier this year around the acceptance of nuclear as being a green technology at the European Union level, and so on. And it helps to just really focalize on something very concrete, very understandable, and that even if it's small, will actually change the narrative around the entire thing.
Thank you very much, Myrto. That was very concise and comprehensive. I like the fact that you actually have even marathons. You mentioned that. So there's some physical fitness.
I said 10Ks and more. I didn't say marathon, but thank you for that.
Thank you very much. We can hear from you, Raquel. Would you like me to represent the question?
Yes, it's fine. Thank you. Well, from Women in Nuclear Mexico, what we have been focusing on is on education, both of awareness of what is nuclear, but also on giving opportunities to women. So we approach them to opportunities such as the IAEA scholarships with Marie Skolodowska, and also connecting them with networks. For example, we have worked very closely with my co-panelists in several activities, which is a very rewarding activity, and taking them into the international sphere. Much of these opportunities don't necessarily are announced, or people don't have access to them. So what we try to do is broadcast them, trying to include people, trying to gather them, and put women at the center of these conversations. Whenever we have an advocacy talk, we always make it around how women are participating, because we have seen that even when you do this, like, men are not feeling excluded. They actually feel included and feel quite surprised that there is a lot of women driving this and they want to participate. And women, this has a gigantic effect on women, because they then understand, then I can be part of this, and then I feel as well included. The other thing that we have been doing as well is including younger children with games and talks. We have a talk that's called Let's Talk About Nuclear, where we go pretty much to any type of gathering, whether it's a kindergarten or a university office, and we just talk about nuclear and start to engage with people. And through this, we have also developed games and different activities that make it a bit more interactive. And one of the ones that we are working the highest on is translating into original languages information about nuclear. So Mexico is a country with a high percentage of indigenous people, and they don't usually get access to information in their original languages, and we have around 83. So what we try to do is we are going to give information to them in their original languages so they can integrate then into the conversation as well.
Well, thank you very much, Raquel. And you do a lot of educational initiatives, and which helps then bring people into the nuclear space so that you have more women inclusion into the nuclear space. Thanks a lot. And now I look into Princess from South Africa. What do you have
I
to
still
say?
remember the question. All right. The campaign I have been really focusing on lately is Africa for Nuclear, which is an advocacy campaign that aims to promote nuclear as a key contributor to achieving African Union Agenda 2063. What is African Union Agenda 2063? It's a blueprint and master plan to transform Africa into a powerhouse, a global powerhouse of the future. So I founded Africa for Nuclear with the aim to make sure that we contribute as the nuclear industry into moving closer to achieving Africa's Union Agenda for 2063. And what I've been doing through Africa for Nuclear is I have been doing videos, short videos, educational videos about nuclear. Some of them I feature experts in the global nuclear industry. I interview them and I post those videos on YouTube. And then I also have been very active on TikTok lately. I have trolls and I'm happy to deal with them. So I post TikTok videos where I also educate people about energy on a broader level, but also focusing on nuclear programs. And I have also written some few articles which have been published in different media, online media platforms, including the World Nuclear News, as well as the Africa Business Platform. And over and above Africa for Nuclear, I am a member of African Young Generation in Nuclear, and I have been handling their communication. African Young Generation in Nuclear, we all know that it's an African association of young nuclear professionals who really their role is to bring networks or professionals together to promote the peaceful uses of nuclear in the African continent. As you know, in the African continent, we only have one commercial nuclear power plant, and it is in South Africa. So my aspiration is to see African nations having more nuclear power plants so that we are able to solve the energy poverty problem that we face as an African continent. And I do hope that we will achieve that, and with the help of the global community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Princess. We have noted your work very much, especially in the African continent. You've become like the face of nuclear in Africa. So thank you very much for your work. Lastly, Paris, can we hear from you, please?
Okay, so Stand Up for Nuclear is a global initiative that works on building the grassroots movement internationally. So as we know, many of the advocates on this stage, it's sometimes a lonely space, and it's only very few of us. There's lack of money, lack of funding, and also lack of community. So Stand Up was originated with one event. Multiple organizations came together to determine that we needed to come out and publicly say we like nuclear, take up space, and to bring it back into the conversation. And I'm from an environmental studies background, and I didn't come across nuclear in a single one of my classes. And so what we aim to do, and what I've done, is just talk to somebody about nuclear. We do this through events, actions, rallies, and also try to offer ourselves as resource for other activists that would like to get into this space. Because it may seem intimidating if you're not from a technical background. So Stand Up works with any individual, any organization, tries to help them see what we can do and offer that community. Because, you know, renewables and the climate movement have their people, they have their funding, and nuclear's been left out deliberately out of the conversation. So we're just trying to take up space. Very simple.
Thank you very much, Paris. We've seen your work, in fact, especially in South Africa. We've attended a lot of Stand Up for Nuclear campaigns, and it's impactful. It's quite impactful, and I think it's contributing very much to climate change actions. And I'm glad that you have your mic with you, because the first question directed to you is going to come through now. So you mentioned the Stand Up for Nuclear, and it's a global movement that touches all continents in the efforts of showing different nations and benefits of nuclear power. Is there any visible trend on who you're communicating, that you are communicating with and working with, and what are the impacts on campaign efficiency?
Yeah, so I'd say it's hard to generalize, right? It's a big world. There's many countries that we work with, and everybody comes from different backgrounds or in different cultures, hold different political views even, and are different genders. I can't generalize. But what we found, or what I found, is that there's two qualities that usually will contribute to being an effective communicator within their space and with others. And so there's two things. It's communication and vision. So communication, being able to effectively communicate the mission, and in turn help others realize why it should be important to them. And also being able to get outside of our nuclear space. It's very comfortable, and being able to talk to journalists, politicians, or even those that are not pro-nuclear or friendly towards it is a skill. And also being able to tailor your message to different audiences. You have to know what motivates people. And so a small example is our allies in Denmark. They've been able to have a clear, concise message saying, the older generation lied to you, nuclear is needed, listen to the science. They go around the entire nation speaking with students, politicians, they go and write articles, and basically are getting the word out, and it's very clear, and they're able to give it to any audience. And as far as vision, every advocate needs to know why they're doing it. Why are you motivated for nuclear because it's we're always fighting out here. So you need to know why, and you need to have a vision of how that applies to not only to yourself, but to your country, why others should care about it. One small example is our allies in the Philippines. Of course, they want to bring nuclear to their country, but how do you engage with an audience that doesn't know much about it, and why should they care? They have their own issues. So when talking about nuclear, they bring a beautiful vision of what nuclear could bring. That's prosperity, that's reliable energy to wean yourself off of your neighboring countries. And then also, Philippines suffers from the need to export their labor, and it's usually women, for the caretaking industry. So nuclear provides local high-paying jobs, and not saying all the women would work there, but it would be another industry that could provide the energy that provides a higher quality of life so that they can mitigate brownouts. So this whole goes into a whole vision, and so all these communicators that I've seen, whether they're women or men, the effective ones that I would say the leading ones, I would say, have these two qualities, and it keeps us going. If you know why you're doing it and you're able to communicate it with others, it just keeps us going, and the movement is more sustainable. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I can actually advocate that. I've seen your work very much. It's so impactful, and we've seen it, as you had mentioned, that it's over 73 campaigns now in over 26 countries. That's quite a good number, honestly. It's amazing. It's amazing work. And now I would like to bring a question to Miss Myrto Tripathi. Myrto.
With a great
Myrto Tripathi. Myrto, you are the voices of nuclear, and you've quoted the studies of Orano from 2019, stating that almost 70% of people opposing nuclear power are women, the same women we want to include. And what could be the reason? How does it have to be addressed in the campaigns?
Well, it's a difficult question to answer, and the general answer you will get is women are less interested about these kind of topics, they're less familiar with it. I think the reality is, unfortunately, that it reverts back to the same cultural consequence of pushing women away from STEM fields of work and studies that make that women happen to be in jobs and to be familiar with other areas than this one. And the common knowledge that has spread all around the public space and the media space is that supposedly nuclear is very technological and very complicated, which is actually very little of all those things. If you compare it to your smartphone, nuclear technical principles behind are pretty straightforward. We counted, actually, not so long ago, how many Nobel Prizes you needed to make nuclear happen. That's 2. For your smartphone to work, you have at least 15 to 20 Nobel Prizes involved in just making your iPhone work. So this is all a question of perception. We've been telling women that they should be against it, that they should not understand it, and they should be away from it. And this is why they are so. And I don't think there is any other good reasons for that to be true. I mean, there's nothing rational that I can come up with that that explains the fact that women should be more against nuclear than men, except for maybe one other aspect, which is there's less women in this field, so they see less of themselves and they consider it's not for them, since none of them are up there on stage. So it's a vicious circle that could also be a virtuous circle. So it's up to us to make it a virtual circle. The more of us will be here, the more of us will display our presence, our confidence in the technology, and our support of the technology, and more of our support to support to the benefits of that technology, to what it contributes to, then it will just come up naturally and fall down naturally. It's just a simple consequence of the social, cultural space we live in.
Thank you very much. We've heard it very clear. And it's, I guess, because women, they were previously disadvantaged, so it's still that resistant to enter into the space.
Yes, and because of that, you mentioned the numbers in France that are absolutely striking, indeed. But I'm pretty sure they're exactly the same everywhere else worldwide. It's a global thing, and it's a global problem. Let's put words on the issue.
It's even a shocker for France when it's leading in the nuclear. 70% of electricity comes from that, but you don't have women, so it's more of a shocker.
And that is another thing that's not as known as it should be, is that France is actually very anti-nuclear. In its legislation, in its regulation, in its politics, in its media space, it's very, very anti-nuclear, despite the fact that nuclear has been a huge part of our lives for the past 40 years. Maybe a little bit because of that, because then it's been a very quiet industry, it's been a very civil servant industry, a government implied-led industry, so it didn't do its own marketing or communication because government does not do its own publicity generally, and so it's been on the quiet side. And on the other side of things, the anti-nuclear movements have been very vocal, very financed, very powerful, and everyone left that space open to them. So the population has been thoroughly exposed to all anti-nuclear rhetoric until it became facts and so-called truth to them. So we are a very schizophrenic country where 70% of our power is nuclear. We're the only G20 country to have decarbonized their electricity grid. We meet our climate targets thanks to nuclear. And everyone is really anti-nuclear, and our law is driven us straight to an exit from nuclear energy rather than renewable of the fleet.
Thank you very much, Tripathi, for that insight. And yeah, we'll see your work. I hope we change the stats. Okay, Raquel, I have some question for you. Yes, the SDG 10 focuses on reducing inequalities, and it is well known that the climate change impacts women disproportionately more than men. Could you share some of WIN's findings on how this SDG is so crucial?
Just thank you for that question. And well, as you're mentioning, this is the SDG that focuses on inequalities, and we know that for most of it, whether it's the impacts of climate change, whether it's economical aspects or access to labor, access to opportunities, is always women and girls among the most vulnerable groups. So we know, for example, that around 31 million girls don't have access to education at the moment. But we also know that the moment that we start investing in women and girls, these inequalities start reducing, and that the impacts and the revenues in the economy are higher and very, very great. So for example, women tend to reinvest 90% of their earnings into the household, which impacts the individual, the community, and ultimately the globe. On the contrary, for example, men reinvest around 30-40%, obviously because economies work different, and also this is also about social structures in which we know women sometimes are much more in charge of the household. So, but still, we know this is going to be a high revenue. We know that investing in women and bringing them into the conversation is going to give us a lot. It's not only that it's the right thing to do, because we know that it's half of the population. We should be as much in the representation and as much in the decision making as everyone else, because we're part of it. But also it brings significant impacts and it brings significant benefits. So those are some of the findings that we have had. Also, I think one of the key things is rethinking what is the problem. We have identified that we need women and that we need individuals in all of their diversities, but we still are having that problem. Like women are under the 25% of the STEM fields, and in nuclear still that is also that's showing. Even that right now I'm really glad that we're all here, but we're still the minority, and we still don't see each other in most of the panels you see in the globe. Like even, I don't know if some of you have seen this picture of the global leaders here at COP, and where were we? Well, we were missing. So we know the issue, we have identified it, but what is the solution? So we need really to change the structures. It's not only enough to say women need to be interested in STEM, because we're curious, we're ingenious, we are as much interested as any other individual. But the thing is that we lack is the support. We don't have the support systems. We have barrier after barrier after barrier. And even if when we come to STEM, then we cannot succeed in it because there is different stuff that hold us back, whether it's that we have a higher labor at home because of chores and stuff that it's always socially pinned into women, or just because our organizations don't have the structures to lead us to the top. So those are the things that we have to see, and that not only now we have tons of women in STEM or tons of women in this field, but how are we actually leading them to success and including them into the conversation of climate change and actually listening to their voices? So that is the actual problematic here that we need to address.
Thank you very much, Raquel. Thanks. I would like to know, though, in Mexico, is government in support of women inclusion and stuff? We saw that Rafael Grossi, Director IAEA, said that by 2025 wants about 50-50 of women presentation in the IAEA. What about your government? Do they support women inclusion? Is it even implemented, let alone supporting?
Well, the situation in Mexico is always funny in terms of pretty much every topic. For example, we do have a lot of policies that are supporting women, but the implementation of it is lacking. So the frameworks sometimes are there, but we don't really implement them. So we still see a lack of women in the representation, a lack of participation. And even when we're there, well, sometimes it's not necessarily the same power as men have. So I would say whether the intention is there, I still wish to see a better implementation of it.
Okay, all right. All the best on that. I trust you. Yes. And okay, we're going to hear from Princey Mthombeni. So that the world can fulfill SDGs, and in particular for you, SDG 4, which is educational work, huge numbers of workforce and public support is needed. In your project, Africa for Nuclear, you use YouTube to reach all types of people with accessible and attractive educational content. What's the role of social media in supporting equal access to knowledge for different social groups? Does it play a role in reducing inequalities?
Thank you for that question, Amanda. The available data shows that social media users accounts for 4.6 billion as of January 2022. So we need to rightfully acknowledge that social media has provided the underprivileged and disadvantaged community with an opportunity to raise their voices. It makes people feel like they are sort of involved in their developmental processes, and also it provides a safe space for discussions. For instance, in Rwanda, there's what they call the Minister Mondays, #Minister Mondays, where the population is given a chance to raise their concerns to their government. So they do feel like they're part of that process. And also there's what they call it's green, it's digital green in Rwanda as well, which brings together a network of farmers who come and discuss their farming prospect or anything that has got to do with farming. And also what social media does, it holds governments accountable. In South Africa, there was a time when the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture was planning to buy the giant flag to the value of 22 million rands. That thing trended on social media, and eventually the president instructed the minister to cancel the project. So through social media, we are able to hold our government also accountable. And finally, we see people with low income in poor countries owning smartphones. So it's no longer a privilege to own a smartphone. Everyone has it now. And this in itself, it presents some sort of evidence that we are equal in the world. It gives some sort of, equalness that at least we are moving towards equality. But the reality is we are not equal, and we will need to move beyond social media in order to address issues of inequality. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, Princess. And so, talking about social media and issues in South Africa in particular, what about the issues of internet access then? Do people really get reached with you through your social media networks, or it still remains with the privileged ones?
Well, to be quite honest, we have many people in the African continent who are still without access to electricity. And then those people, they also don't have, they do not own smartphones, most of those people. So I am unable to reach the whole of African continent through social media. So I think we have, in order to do that, we will have to, do outreach programs that, we go on grassroots level in order to reach them, the majority of the African people, because, they are not on social media. I still need to check the stats on how many Africans are actually on social media besides South Africans, because majority of South Africans are on social media.
Okay, thank you very much. And we've seen your TikTok videos, which are very educational, and they touch on a number of topics comparing nuclear with other energy sources. So this is very educational. You can go and check those. And then now, as we wrap up our wonderful session, it's been such a nice one. As we wrap up, let us state the huge challenge that nuclear domain, as all technical fields, suffers underrepresentation of women, especially in advanced levels of expert and executive positions in all spectrums of professionals. What is your experience that allowed you to advance in shaping the change in your environments? And how can young girls and women be empowered by your stories, your personal stories now? So we can just start with Paris.
Okay. So speaking from only my experience, I came from an environmental studies background, so I was a little intimidated entering this field. Like Myrto mentioned, I thought it was super technical and that I couldn't understand it. I wasn't very good at math, but I stayed in the space because I wanted to. I think this technology gave me hope, and I wanted to bring this to others. And so I made the engineers tutor me and give me some basic concepts of how to understand energy and nuclear energy. And with that's enough, and you can continuously learn while you're in this space. But coming from a different space, a different sector, different studies, I came from a humanities department. It's imperative that we are collaborating with others. And there was a huge disconnect between humanities and engineering departments, at least at my university. And we didn't collaborate, and we each thought the other was doing it the wrong way. But we're finding that we need each other in each of these spaces. So, at least in my experience, just take up space, stay in it, learn. If you're feeling uncomfortable, there's friends, there's people that can help you. And I think I know what it's like to go on a Zoom call or on a space and look for the other women in the room, the other women that come from a similar background as you. But you can be that person for somebody else. And so that's my experience.
Thank you, Paris. Okay, that was some disturbance. I'm sorry about that. Thank you very much. We'll move to Prince now, and then she'll tell us her story and what has helped her shape and advance in the field that she's in. What can young girls learn from you?
My experience is that comfort is overrated. I was comfortable not knowing about nuclear, and I think many people are, but it's overrated. And being comfortable, it keeps the status quo. I mean, I know that we love silence. It gives us a peace of mind, and we all love our peace of minds, don't we? I was hoping men would be like, women love peace of mind. Yes, we do love our peace of mind as women too. But now having a peace of mind is like you maintain the status quo, and it changes nothing. So we've got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable by speaking these hard truths, especially as women. In a world that wants us women to be silent, let's choose to be loud. I choose to be loud myself. And also, finally, finding your purpose. I found my why, and that's what has been, driving me to solve these global problems that demand a great deal of accountability and also intent. So yeah, I think let's all find our whys as people, especially young women, and I hope my story touches that one young girl out there, and so that they become, better people.
Thank you very much. And for you, Raquel, what is your experience that allowed you to advance in shaping and the change in your environments, and how can young girls and women learn from your story?
For me, was finding a network. So I do come from a technical background, and I started to participate in international conference, and I started to be like, okay, well, we are not that many women in here. That's strange, but let's see how this goes. And then suddenly I found a network which was Women in Nuclear, and I realized, well, I do like nuclear, and I am a woman, and I want to maybe the network. This sounds like the deal for me. So I started to investigate and to see if there was something like that in my country, and I realized there wasn't. So I said, like, well, I'll start it, So I think for me that was the most important thing. And another very important thing that we need to highlight sometimes was allyship. So in my case, in my university, pretty much all of my professors were men. And actually the person that got me to nuclear was a man, and he started to point out about the opportunities, and he told me, these are opportunities, these are groups that are encouraging women, and I think that is important because there's still a dominance. So if they don't start to build allyship and start to empower women as well, they're still gonna dominate the opportunities. So I think that is another topic that we need to highlight. And for other women and girls, I would say, try not to kick yourself out of the places you've earned yourself the right to be. That is a hard thing that we as women do all the time. We have this imposter syndrome, and then we're like, am I enough for being there? Is this something that I should be doing? And this is very hard to overcome, and networks really help on this, but we really have to keep every day that in mind. Don't kick yourself out of a place that you've earned completely the right to be.
Thank you, Raquel. And I know that you are a board member for Women in Nuclear. Yes, how is that going? What is your role there exactly? What have you done? What impact have you had in that space?
Well, Women in Nuclear is composed of like a governance structure. All of the chapter representatives, we have a say into what happens in the global activities. And in terms of like Win Global Young Generation, I was one of the ones that started the group, which was founded by Win Global President Dominique Muyot. So we, in both roles, what pretty much is we help on decide what are the actions that we're going to take and support whatever is the head of the organization planning for us. So,
right. Thank you very much. And we can hear you from Tripathi, Myrto now. Tripathi comes easy. And can I repeat the question? What is your experience that allowed you to advance in shaping the change in your environment? And how can young girls and women be empowered by your story?
Well, I don't know if they can, but I certainly hope they will. But I wanted to tell Princey just before that I think for Africa to get on social media, Africa needs power and access to power. And I think this is what we're here for as well. And then social media hopefully will come. And thankfully you're doing an absolutely great job at it. But that small joke aside, to remind everyone what the situation of Africa is as far as power as access is concerned. To answer your question, apologies. I think where I come from is pretty straightforward and should work for men and women alike. It's essentially finding the right match between what really needs to be done when you realize that something in the world really needs to be done, and that you actually happen to be able to do it, or to contribute to it. And that you actually can make a difference in the literal sense of the term, not the expression that's fashionable, but really like, can you make a difference? Is what you yourself can bring will actually bring added value to these things that needs to happen. So to make it more explicit, for example, when I realized what the issue of energy was and the climate was, and I was UN Global Compact, and I'd spent 3 years at COPS realizing this, I could have created the voices of solar energy, right? I could have. But first I didn't know anything about it. Like I was a I had been a nuclear executive, and I knew about the topic, so I had things to bring to the table that I knew what they were, and I knew how to talk about them. So I had added value there. The second thing is that solar energy was admittingly less efficient and did not bring as much to the issues that nuclear would. And the third very important thing is that there were already tons of people advocating solar energies, so why me more, why would it add in particular? So it's not that I am against solar energy, certainly not. We need all low carbon sources of energy, but no one was advocating for nuclear. And where I have been a woman a little bit, as one can say, is I did spend 3-4 years, maybe more, trying to get the men on top at the decision-making levels to take up that fight and to go down that road, and they didn't do it. But I did lose five years trying to get them to do it, right? Before I decided that, okay, it needs to be done. So if no one's going to do it, then I'm going to do it. And regardless if I'm a man or a woman, I have money, I don't, I have a status or not, it needs to be done. And I think that's maybe something that may characterize, and I'm being very cautious about all this, as you can see, also women, in a sense, is that we probably have less to lose and more to gain, because, yes, it happens that in social and professional structures, we're generally less favored. So, the courage to go at it also comes from that.
Okay. Thank you very much. That was very comprehensive. And I can say that as a young woman, I'm learning a lot from your initiatives. And I like the fact that you are all spread around the world. So I have lessons from all over the world, basically South America, Europe, and Africa. And that's pretty very interesting and nice for me as a young woman. And now, thanks to our audience, maybe we can give them a clap of the hands, and then we can move into asking questions or getting questions from the audience. Thank you. And may I please, the floor is open for the audience to ask questions, either a generic question or a specific question to my panel speakers.
Thank you, Myrto.
You trying to rephrase the question, or remember it? Okay, we have.
Hi, Shirley Rodriguez from Generation Atomic. I'm going to ask the same question that I asked in a different panel. What do you see for the industry in the next 10 years?
Is that a question directed to me?
To all of you. Okay. From what we are right now and the development of our industry in 10 years.
I can provide my opinion to that question, because I used to be part of the industry not so long ago. Actually, 7 years ago, I was part of the industry. And I think in 10 years, it would have probably understood and owned its role, not only as a business as the other ones are, but who really has a specific contribution to the different stakes that we're facing, be them human, climate, or environmentally related. Probably they'll factor in the environmental impact that's little of nuclear more in their understanding of themselves and their communication. And certainly if things go as at least I would like them to see going, which is more nuclear in replacement of fossil fuels, the industry should be more diverse, larger, and probably more powerful. And people like us are going to be useful also as counterpowers to this new emerging power, because we're going to be constructive, we're going to be favorable to it, but we're going to keep an eye on it. We're still going to be the customers of that industry. And today, we want that industry to strive and develop with a good environment and a fair environment to the contribution it has. But tomorrow, we're going to also, as today, keep on asking them and watching them and requesting that they actually provide the service that we as citizens are requiring from them.
Just to add to that great answer from Myrto, I think that right now we're seeing a lot of discussions in terms of energy security and also about how the pandemic obviously impacted economic activity. So this is more on the perspective of less on how do I see the industry, but much more as well like how do I see the world changing towards the industry. I think definitely there is a need for having this conversation and that people are going to have to listen. I think we've reached this point where it's not necessarily a decision where I don't want to discuss nuclear. It's really a necessity now to discuss nuclear. And this is going to be very impactful for us. And it's a key moment for not only the people in advocacy, but people in the industry to be much more in ownership of what is our role and to be much more active into this conversation. Don't wait around for us to be invited to the table, but claim our place in there and say, we need to stop delaying this. Otherwise, every year we keep hearing like now 1.5 is not enough. So we're going to reach a point where there is no return. So like, I think that's what I see.
Maybe just one short answer. From an African perspective, of course, so that I don't impact the global community. This world is moving towards net zero carbon emissions by 2050. And in order for us to achieve that, we will need nuclear as part of the energy mix. And I very, worried that Africans will realize that later on when the damage has been done in our economy and in our grids. So over and above the nuclear power plants that are being built currently, which is about 53 of them globally. And that's a sign that this industry in 5 years' time will be bigger. But then in 20 years' time also, I see it growing because this world will not be powered by wind turbines and solar panels only. Thank you.
Right, just to add to that, I think people are looking for something different. I think with this climate crisis and the energy crisis, we're seeing that the status quo isn't working. Decisions that they've taken 20 plus years ago are coming to effect now, and we need more power, and people are looking for something different. So in regards to the industry, I think nuclear is going to grow. I think the industry is slowly learning how to find its confidence and how to actually be proud of the technology that they are stewards of and are going to be able to relax maybe a little bit and welcome this activist, this advocacy vibe that we're bringing. Because I think with the industry that they struggle attending activist events or like advocacy rallies or actions, and I think they're gonna hopefully embrace it and become more proud of what they do. Fingers crossed.
Thank you. And from me, I think I'm seeing Egypt powering from nuclear, the ones they are building right now. That's what's going to happen in 10 years. Can you have another question from the floor? Anna.
Thank you. As a young woman that is working as an engineer, having thoughts like I have to deal it, I have to choose, I have to make a decision between would I like to become a mother, or would I like to advance more in my career? So my question is, did you find, for the panelists here that are mothers, did you find any difficulties, or which were the difficulties that you lived and which were the support that you received? How did you do to work, advocate for nuclear, and being a mother?
All right, that's a trap. It's a difficult question. It's a difficult question to be honest with and not and still keep the vibe up. It's really difficult. As far as I'm concerned, I waited a very long time first because my work had priority. And because I was having fun also, and I loved my life, so that was one thing that was important. I do not and will never regret having been a mother at some point and being one now. I think it's very old-fashioned to do, but it's very pragmatic and practical. You have to find the right father that will actually take responsibility and share the burden. And you will have, even if it's very open-minded and very, young and open-minded on sharing the load, he will not as much as he should. He hasn't been trained to be. So you're going to have to be very, very... I was going to say something I should not say, but you're going to have to be very cautious about that and work at it from the very first day to make sure that it is a shared burden, a shared responsibility. Because at the end, you're going to carry more of the load and of the consequences of having mothered children than he will. So the least you can do is that whatever part of the burden you can take, you should. Because it's a great gift. It certainly made me reassess my own priorities, and probably it has a little bit to do with the fact that I started this civil society endeavor and essentially blew up in pieces my professional career to do that. But it's worthy. So either you have either end. You make sure that the father, the other person at least, you're having those children with, are ready to take their part of the responsibility. And the other strategy is also to have children in an organization that will allow you to have children. Having children outside any kind of support structure is really hard because they won't forgive you for this. They'll make you pay for it every single step of the way. Sorry for that answer to be so honest and truthful, but it really is a real life experience.
Anyone would like to add? Any mothers? No? Okay. We are very close to closing our panel discussion now. We've had some vibrant and interesting as well as very educational talks with my esteemed panelists. So I can take one more question from our audience and then I can close the session. So if anyone has a burning question, yes, please.
Okay, thank you. By the way, I'm a father of twins, so I can tell you as men we are very trainable. So if you pick the right guy, you'll be fine. I just have a question. I come from Namibia. We are a country which has uranium for obviously to help with nuclear power. I just wanted to understand, how do the prices globally for, let's say, coal, biomass, uranium compare in terms of nuclear energy compared to coal? Are the prices sort of levelized, or is the price of nuclear energy going to be able to compete with some of these other sources? Because obviously the solar and the winds are being favored because of their price, but we also know it has an intermittency problem, so there is still the need for baseload. So how does nuclear compare to the other prices of other technology options?
They'll take the mic to make the good answers after I made the first bad one. Well, the renewables are competitive today because of the subsidies that accompany it, and because they don't factor in their prices the entirety of the cost, including what we call the system cost that will factor in the intermittency and everything. What we're valuing today is the cost of producing 1 kilowatt hour of electricity, and not the cost of having 1 kilowatt of electricity when you turn the switch on when you need it. And that cost will make nuclear, once we've framed the entire economic system around that cost of the service that is being rendered by the technology, then nuclear will become very competitive. But that being said, uranium is never really going to be a factor of the cost for nuclear energy because it has such a small part in the overall structure of it. Even if the price of uranium goes 200 times, it's only going to impact a couple cents on the final kilowatt hour price, which is great because it means it's never going to be so strategic that it's going to become a raw material problem like we can see on the fossil fuels industry when actually you have oil and gas prices that have geopolitical impact because of how strategic they are. It's never going to happen with uranium. It doesn't have any other uses that conflict with that's also going to participate in raising the price. What is going to bring the price of nuclear down, it's going to be making more, knowing better how to do them, having more series in fabrication. Nuclear is a technology of the knowledge, the human experience. It's a technology of science. The only resource that is being intensively used by nuclear is knowledge. It's human intensive and nothing else.
Thank
so
you
this
very
is
much.
what will help us bring the price down of nuclear, making more of it.
Thank you very much, Myrto, for giving us that insight on market prices. And we have come to an end. I can see that we have a lot of questions still coming from the audience. We'll take them after. So thank you all everyone for attending the event, and we hope that you enjoyed it. Special thanks as well to the IAEA for giving us this opportunity to have this event organized here at the Pavilion. And please don't forget to follow us on our websites and social media networks. And we recommend you take a look at the IAEA's website for more information, especially about nuclear applications and in medicine, agriculture, and so forth, and as well as nuclear energy as a power source. So that's the closing of our session, and thanks a lot.